Louisiana has not executed any death row inmates since 2010, despite being one of the states where the penalty is legal. Now that Jeff Landry has taken over the governor's chair, conversations about the death penalty and how it's performed are resurfacing. House Bill number 6 moved through committee and onto the debate floor early Thursday morning. Cecilia Capel, a death row lawyer, best known for filing clemency applications for several inmates last year, tells us what the bill means and how it could potentially affect her clients. So first, I just wanted to say thank you so much for agreeing to sit down with us. I know for you, you are a death row lawyer, and the death penalty has really come back into public conversation, especially after last year. But before we get into that, I wanted to start with asking the question. Louisiana is one of the states where the death penalty is still legal, but we haven't executed anyone since 2010. Why is that?
Well, for a variety of reasons. First and foremost, we have an 84% reversal rate of death sentences. That means that 84% of the time, somebody that is sentenced to death has either their sentence or conviction reversed. Since the time that I have been doing this work, which is 15 years, we've seen 36 people removed off of death row because their conviction or sentence was unconstitutional. There's also been trouble getting the drugs used for lethal injection, and that's because the manufacturers of these drugs fundamentally object to the use of their medicines to kill someone. And so we've seen departments of corrections around the country resorting to black market drugs, compounded drugs from sketchy pharmacies, and other tactics to try to kill people.
The death penalty came back into public conversation because 51 out of 57 inmates at the time applied for clemency applications. And I know that you were one of the lawyers representing some of the inmates that were on death row. What was the result of that? Were any of those inmates ever granted clemency?
Not a single one, and I credit that to Governor Landry's interference with the process, which we assert was improper. And prevented the pardon board from hearing the merits of these cases. So not a single hearing on the merits occurred. And I'll note that the one person on death row that did not file clemency had his conviction reversed just a few months ago, or last month in January.
So Governor Landry had said from the beginning during his campaign years and while he was working on that process that he would try to bring executions back in Louisiana, even though technically they've never been illegal. He wanted to start the executions again. And now we're kind of seeing the beginning of that with House Bill 6. Can you explain what this bill would do and how that would potentially affect some of your clients?
Yes. Governor Landry told us he was going to do this. He's been telling us since at least 2018 when he was Attorney General. In fact, he posted his proposed legislation back then, almost 6 years ago, so we've known that he was going to do this. This should come as a surprise to no one. What this bill does is it adds new and unconstitutional methods of execution, electric chair, which we stopped using in 1990 because it was causing horrific botches and horrible pain, and nitrogen suffocation, which has been used one single time in Alabama, and the nation and the country, probably the world, would agree that that was a botched execution. And so this bill is not about whether we are for or against the death penalty. It doesn't abolish or reinstitute the death penalty or impose a moratorium. What it's about is how far would we go as a state to kill a man?
How does Louisiana's House Bill 6 compare to other states outside of Alabama?
I believe around 6 states that authorize the use of gas to execute individuals. Only 2 authorize the nitrogen method, and only 1 has used it on one person, Kenny Smith, who struggled to breathe and vomited and aspirated his vomit, and it was a pretty horrible situation for everyone watching.
So that's the concern, is that nitrogen gas is it'll be a botched execution. Somebody could suffer in the process.
Absolutely. And I think that it's hard for a lot of us to imagine being electrocuted. It's just such a foreign thing. But I think we all, as human beings, can imagine being suffocated and what that feeling would be like, and count the minutes, for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, how that would feel, and then ultimately die.
So as a death row attorney,
What does this mean, this bill passing? It passed. What does this mean for you? What does this mean for your clients?
Oh, it means a lot of lawsuits. There's going to be a lot of litigation. I think things are going to be tied up. And the fact that the legislature has authorized electrocution is just, it's surprising to me because in 1990, the legislature overwhelmingly voted to replace electrocution with lethal injection because it was cruel and unusual, and they wanted to move forward away from that barbaric method. You know, we've heard a lot about the families of the victims in the past several weeks, and there's been a lot of vocal families of victims, and the families of the victims in these cases should always be listened to. Their voices should always be heard. But not only those victims that are in favor of the death penalty, there are victims that are against the execution of the person that was convicted of killing their loved one. And those voices are important too. And I have been really disappointed to see our legislators basically say there's real victims and there's fake victims. And the real victims are the ones that want executions.
Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.